What's next for transportation energy? On today's episode, a conversation about the future of roadside signage for electric vehicle charging stations with Sunshine's Director of Digital Solutions and Integration, Curtis Dukes, and TEI's Vice President, Jeff Hove.
Curtis, nice to have you with us today. One of the things as we're working at TEI's EV Council that comes up almost constantly is consumer demand, consumer education when it comes to electric vehicles. And probably at the top of the list for why people do not buy electric vehicles is because they feel that public charging does not exist out there along, their routes. And so I was thinking about why do they, I drove my F-150 Lightning from Des Moines up to northern Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago, and I made it no problem. It took a little bit longer, of course, stop and charge, and is there a line, is there not a line, but I could see that. And so I was struggling with, why does the consumer believe that the charging is severely lacking? It is. It's got a long ways. We got a lot of growth that we still need in that space. But at the same time, I was thinking that, I've got an app on my phone that's got about 10 but I got about 10 different apps to tell me where the charging stations are. Some of them are better than others. Some of them, miss the charging station here and there. But then I started to think about the consumer that doesn't currently own an electric vehicle. They don't have that app on their phone. And so their mindset is, out of sight, out of mind. Okay, the charging must not exist because I don't see it. And so therefore, I'm not interested in buying an electric vehicle. You're in the business of reaching out to the consumer as they're going down the road and, letting the consumer know that here's gasoline, here's diesel, here's whatever fuel you're looking at on 100-foot signs. Whereas when you get on site, the charging infrastructure might look like a transformer off to the side. It might look like some big, piece of equipment out there. And it's not like people are not getting that visual aspect of it. So I really wanted to, get your input on what Sunshine has been doing. If you could do an introduction for your company and what, how long you've been in the space and who you're working with. And then, what you're doing to bring that visual aspect for EV charging on site.
Absolutely, Jeff. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me today. It's I personally have been in this industry about 25 years. Whether it's fuel technology facilities, have worked for and with a number of petroleum retailers. Sunshine has been in this space since the 80s. So, and it's the amazing story, but they started out kind of unrelated to fuel signage. They were or we were involved in we had these interstates. You've probably seen them, these crank up message boards, right? Back in the 80s,
Yeah.
you crank them, they pull them over on the side, and they're still they're still present today. You would crank up these signs on the interstate for for directional or for roads closed, et cetera. So we started out in that back in the 80s, and then one of the larger retailers came out and said, "Hey, we want to use this technology for signage, right? Billboards, high-rise signs." And so we moved into that very quickly. We've worked with some of the larger travel plaza, travel center retailers, truck stops. The signs have continued to evolve with bigger numbers, brighter numbers, more visibility. And so it's like, okay, how far out down the interstate can we have visibility, right? And to this day, it's the majority of what you see is the brand, the price, and the offering, whether it's some type of QSR or some type of internal QSR or a franchise, et cetera. So it's just been those three things of here's what we have. And so, as to your point, yeah, to the non-EV owner, they unless the retailers do a better job of hey, broadcasting. These are the additional amenities we have. We have dog parks, we have EV charging stations, not just we have gas and diesel at this price and an Arby's concept or a Wendy's concept, et cetera. We need to do a better job in the industry of letting people know, hey, this is what all we have from the interstate. I've had this talk with a number of people regarding, well, the current EV owners, like, to your point, we've got 3 or 4 apps on our phone that say, hey, this is what we have. I think the apps are great. However, I've said this before. If you have the opportunity just to get off the plane in whatever airport you're traveling through, if in a connecting flight, get off and just observe the amount of people who have the app on their phone. They can pull up the app and see exactly where their next flight is. But the majority of people exit and look at the signage. Right, signage is there, and they immediately observe it. You go to a shopping mall. You can pull up the mall has an app, or you can quick search. You can find out where every location is, but people always go to the sign to look. So there's still a way that we're programmed, regardless of the generation. How if it's a boomer or a millennial, it doesn't matter. People see signs, they look at them, and that's what we're fortunately that's we've been in this industry a while, creating signage that not only you see from the interstate, but also the directional sign, right? Once you get off the interstate and you turn into the lot, where do I go from there? And that's another, again, I've been an EV owner as well. There are some places that, like you said, they're in the back corner. They're, it's wherever it was able to install with minimal disruption to the parking lot. So if they had the ability to install in the back parking lot, that was great. Some areas making it a little bit more welcoming and inviting. But we don't do a good job of directional signage once you enter. That the app will get you there, and then it's kind of like, okay, this is the address. You're on your own from here. Figure right around the parking lot until you can figure out where to plug in and charge.
Yeah, so. and I can appreciate. I love the airport example. I've got trust issues because of the app on my phone. I'll be sitting at a gate and not even realizing that the gate has changed because my app didn't update, fast enough. And then I'm going, well, where the hell is everybody else, and so I got to go to the big board, the big sign, and say, yep, no, you're not only, at the wrong gate, you're at the wrong terminal, and I'm sprinting through the airport. So I can really appreciate that, and having that visual that, yes, it is here. And your signage too on the EV charging, I mean, you can do different things with it. You can say, I've got so many ports open. Here's the cost, to charge. There's so many things you can do with that sign, as well, it seems like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The message centers that, whether it's on the monument sign, as soon as you turn on the property, or the high-rise sign, the ability to add the message centers to the high-rise sign, you have the ability to place whatever content at any given time. So if you're, if you want to have, scrolling through and show the EV logo that says, hey, we have chargers, or we have chargers available right now. Maybe during the 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. your day part is, it says, hey, coffee sales are big. So, maybe you rotate a little bit more coffee ads in there, fresh cup of coffee. We're seeing a lot more of your interstate travel plazas doing, installing, dog parks. A lot more people are traveling with their pets nowadays. So, you don't know until you arrive there, unless you're, getting online and looking at a location's amenities. But by the amount of time that you see a sign 2 miles ahead, these are the amenities you have, which is kind of what we rely on right now with billboards. At that point, you're having to, hopefully a passenger's pulling out saying, okay, what all do they have? They have this concept. They have a dog park. They have, showers, clean restrooms, et cetera. You have the ability to do that, along, whether it's billboards, whether it's a high-rise sign, to get your message across. And we're having that conversation with a number, it's whether it's EV driven, or whether it's just other amenities. Other organizations are saying, okay, what does the future of this look like? Because for 40 years, it has been, we just tell people we're here and this is how much gas and diesel cost, right now.
Right.
Now, and granted, it's the that's the predominant that's the predominant message that we want to display for that amount of time. But I think we're moving to the next phase. Okay, what else do we want to display? What are other things that we want to say? Hey, stop here. Or you've got the kids in the back. Maybe I tell people maybe the app is taking you to exit so and so to charge. The kids are in the back and they see this concept, whether it's the one the one concept that they always scream at, and then they see, oh, that's over there, but look, Dad, there's an EV logo as well. You can charge here while I go get a milkshake and some chicken nuggets, right?
So you're using the kids to, yeah, I see, work the parents. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, this is and your signs that you're putting up right now, again, like you said, you've got what are the sizes that we're talking about? Because right, I pull into a site, to your point, I want to know, how do I get from entering the site over to that charger without being in the way of something, right? We got transports, we've got all sorts of stuff coming and going. The typical EV driver is a light duty vehicle, that's going to be using this, and especially with our travel centers, right, which are a perfect spot for charging, right? They got a big footprint, but there's a lot of activity going on there. So I assume you've got a sign that's a little bit smaller on site, so you can see from as you enter the site exactly where you want to drive through. Is there much thought that goes into that right now, or are we still at that stage where we just need to get the sign somewhere on property?
No, we do. There's we do offer a directional sign. We've had specifically in you mentioned the travel plazas, travel centers. There's so many things going on. Large footprint location, right? In some cases 5-6 times bigger than your normal convenience store. And so we've had our customers before have said, hey, we want to put directional signs on here. We need trucks to know to go this direction to minimize disruption. We need our 4-wheel customers or our gas customers to go this direction to minimize any disruption or minimize any bottleneck or anything like that. So we've sold these directional signs. We've manufactured these directional signs for a number of years that are either they have the ability to be powered via you're wired in if there's availability. We've actually had some customers that wanted to put them in remote areas of the lot to give directional paths, so we've had to go with some solar options in places which light up at night, and those tend to work and give you that visibility to this is where you go, because there's nothing worse than riding around. Again, I've had an EV for 5 years, and there's nothing worse than riding around when you're already trying to get to your destination, and you're like, okay, where do I go? I can't find this thing. And then you get back to the trust issues. It was the app correct? Did they remove these for whatever reason? Is there something I don't know? And you're just riding around the parking lot. So yeah, Sunshine is we've been in this industry that we want people to see the high rise, right? So whether you're a mile out on the interstate, this is what we have. Exit at this specific exit. Once you get off the exit, you have the monument signs, you have the road signs, and then in some cases we manufacture the directional signs that just are there for directions. That's it. Here's where to go once you're on site.
Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate the work you guys are doing in this space. I do think it's going to be, from our vantage point, I look at it as consumer education. And I think, the non-EV drivers have to see it. They have to see it to believe it. And I think, your signs they're really well made. And I think this is kind of a piece of the puzzle that we've been missing. So I appreciate your time, and look forward to working with you more in the future.
Absolutely.
What's Next for Transportation Energy is a production of the Transportation Energy Institute. Find out more about us at transportationenergy.org.